For most of our existence, humanity lived in a long, quiet dawn. If you could step back into the world 300,000 years ago, you would not see cavemen grunting in the dark. You would see people, faces like ours, hands capable of precision, eyes scanning the horizon with intent and awareness. They knew fire, they knew stone, they knew how to hunt, how to gather, how to survive in landscapes that would crush most modern humans within days. And yet, if you searched that world for signs of meaning, you would find almost nothing that lasts. No carved gods, no painted stories, no monuments to memory. Just tools, camps, bones, and silence. The oldest faces we recognize as human emerged deep in Africa, scattered across a continent that pulsed between green abundance and unforgiving desert. These early Homo sapiens were not a single tribe or a single birthplace. They were a web of populations, separated by distance and climate, sometimes reconnecting, sometimes vanishing. Their bodies were modern, their minds were powerful, but their world was unstable beyond imagination. For tens of thousands of years, survival was a negotiation with chaos. Rainfall could vanish within a lifetime, lakes could dry into salt flats, forests could collapse into dust. A group that thrived for generations could disappear completely, leaving no descendants and no memory. In that kind of world, nothing fragile lasts. Not stories, not rituals, not symbols carved into wood or painted onto skin. Even knowledge itself becomes brittle. These early humans were brilliant engineers of survival. They shaped stone with foresight. They combined materials into weapons that extended their reach and power. They mastered fire, not just for warmth, but for transformation. And yet, their tools speak a different language than their minds. The tools tell us how they lived. They do not tell us what they believed. This is the great paradox of early Homo sapiens. The machinery was ready, the hands, the voice, the brain, all capable of imagination. But imagination leaves no fossil unless it becomes something the earth cannot forget. And for most of human history, almost everything was made of things that rot, dissolve, burn, or drown. We are staring at a silence not because nothing happened, but because almost everything was erased. Time is not neutral. It is an engine that deletes nearly all evidence of fragile lives. Wood disappears, fiber dissolves, songs vanish the moment the last voice falls quiet, and coastlines, where humans most likely gathered, are now buried beneath oceans. So the question begins to sharpen. Was humanity truly waiting, or were we already dreaming, already telling stories, already shaping meaning, only to have those worlds swallowed by climate, collapse, and time itself? Because if the spark existed, if it flickered again and again without catching, then something else must explain why, around 50,000 years ago, it finally did. To understand why the fire did not catch, you have to understand how close humanity came to disappearing altogether. This was not a steady climb toward progress. It was a series of near failures. Again and again, the planet narrowed the path until only a few survived. Between roughly 130,000 and 70,000 years ago, Africa entered one of the most unstable climate phases in its history. Rain systems collapsed, monsoons failed, vast lakes shrank into poisoned basins. Entire regions flipped from green to uninhabitable within generations. For small bands of humans, this was not a challenge to adapt, it was a sentence of extinction. Genetic evidence confirms what the climate record suggests. There were moments when the total number of Homo sapiens on Earth may have dropped to fewer than 10,000 breeding individuals, perhaps fewer. That is not a civilization. That is not even a species in any comfortable sense. That is a handful of families scattered across a continent, each one a fragile island of memory. And when populations are that small, something cruel happens to culture. Knowledge dies faster than it spreads. A hunting strategy disappears when the one person who perfected it dies. A story vanishes when its teller stars. A ritual collapses when a group scatters beyond recognition. Intelligence does not matter. Creativity does not matter. Numbers do. Then came something worse. 74,000 years ago, a mountain on the island of Sumatra tore itself apart. The Toba eruption was not just a volcanic event, it was a planetary wound. Ash darkened skies across continents. Temperatures fell. Ecosystems collapsed. For years, maybe decades, the world entered a volcanic winter. Once again, humanity passed through a funnel so narrow it barely fit through. The stone tools found before the ash and after the ash are nearly identical, which tells us something crucial. Humans did not forget how to think. They simply became fewer. The mind survived. The network almost did not. This is where the story bends, because after this catastrophe, something begins to change. Small groups retreat to places that offer reliability when the land fails. Coastlines, river mouths, sheltered caves near the sea. Places where food arrives on a schedule, guided by tides and moons instead of rainfall. Here, memory becomes valuable in a new way. Knowing when the tide retreats matters. Knowing which shellfish can be harvested without collapsing the ecosystem matters. Knowing where fresh water emerges after storms matters. Knowledge stops being optional. It becomes the difference between endurance and extinction. And slowly, quietly, something new begins to form. Not art yet, not myth etched in stone, but memory shared, knowledge repeated, practices taught carefully, not casually. The earliest hints of symbolic behavior appear like brief flashes, engraved ochre, shell beads, intentional markings. They appear, disappear, and appear again. The spark flickers, but the flame still struggles to hold, because the numbers are still small, the networks are still fragile. One bad climate swing can erase everything again. And yet, the conditions are changing. Population pockets begin to grow denser. Connections between groups last longer. Knowledge starts surviving the death of individuals. For the first time, memory begins to outlive the person who holds it. This is not the explosion, not yet, but it is the scaffolding, the moment when humanity stops resetting back to zero. Something is building, and when it breaks free, it will move faster than anything that came before it. What finally changed was not a miracle, not a single gene, not a sudden awakening of intelligence. It was scale. Quietly at first, then irreversibly, humanity crossed a threshold. When populations remain small and scattered, culture behaves like smoke. It rises, twists briefly into shape, then disappears. But when enough people live close enough, long enough, something non-linear happens. Memory stops breaking. Ideas stop dying with their inventors. Knowledge begins to stack instead of resetting. This is the moment that matters. By around 60 to 50,000 years ago, human populations reached a density they had never sustained before. Climate stabilized just enough. Coastal corridors held. River systems became predictable. Groups began meeting other groups not once in a lifetime, but repeatedly. Children grew up hearing the same stories from multiple voices. Skills were taught redundantly. If one person forgot, another remembered. And suddenly, culture became resilient. That's when the archaeological record ignites. Beads appear not once, but everywhere. Cave walls fill with animals that are not food, but symbols. Burials change. Bodies are placed deliberately, accompanied by objects that serve no practical purpose. Music emerges in bone flutes. Patterns repeat across thousands of kilometers. Meaning becomes contagious. This was not humanity becoming smarter. This was humanity becoming connected. Once memory could survive disaster, everything accelerated. Stories layered on stories, rituals stabilized, identity expanded beyond the family into clans, then networks, then shared mythic worlds. The invisible became real because it could now persist. A story told could still exist 1,000 generations later. And once that happened, there was no going back. Within a few thousand years, humans crossed oceans, entered ice-locked continents, adapted to rainforests, deserts, and tundra, not because their bodies changed, but because their minds now carried maps made of symbols, gods, ancestors, laws, futures imagined before